This is Missing Logic's podcast, episode number 155. Today, our special guest is Melissa Salmeron. Melissa has dedicated her work to helping overworked moms. And today, we're going to talk with her about parent guilt and so much more. So don't miss it.
Welcome back to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. This is the only podcast that shows you how to leverage polarity intelligence, an essential competency for healthcare leaders, and the missing logic in healthcare, so you can create healthy, healing organizations and become a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable healthcare leader.
We are your hosts, Tracy Christofferson and Michelle Trosett. We've been best friends and colleagues for over 30 years. And during that time, we coached healthcare leaders across North America around how to create healthy, healing organizations.
Today, we coach healthcare leaders and leadership teams to live thriving, resilient, and balanced lives, combat burnout, and create the best places to give and receive care.
This podcast is for the unsung hero of healthcare, the healthcare leader. We want you to know we see you and we'll be here for you each week. In this podcast, we're going to challenge healthcare's industry norms, flip limiting beliefs, and share proven strategies so you can be your best self at work and at home, live and lead intentionally, and experience well-being and joy.
We are glad you are here and look forward to sharing the journey with you. If you aren't totally convinced this podcast is for you, just listen to a few episodes and convince yourself. Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. This is co-host Michelle speaking, and I am with...
Tracy.
The other co-host.
The other co-host. Yes, Tracy. That's who I am. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we're still across the country from each other for this podcast. And we just interviewed someone that actually is kind of in the middle of us. She's in Texas, and you're in California, and I'm in Michigan. And we just wrapped up a great interview with Melissa Salmeron.
Yep. Yeah. Well, she's been kind of in our world in a lot of different ways over the last few years. We've got a chance to get to know her as a coach, as a person. And just, we've been talking with a lot of leaders, a lot of moms out there, parents, right? There's a lot of the challenges of being parents, having careers, that type of thing. And Melissa is all about supporting the moms in the world. So, the overworked moms. So it was just wanted to invite her to share her wisdom. And it was just really a great conversation. She's such a sweet person. And
she's very sweet. Yeah. And she's very committed, which I really appreciate about her as well. And so she's got some tips and tricks for overworked moms out there. And Tracy and I, we work with a lot of leaders that certainly feel that way and feel the parent guilt. So we invited Melissa on our show, and you're not going to want to miss it. So let me tell you a little bit about Melissa, and then we'll get on to the interview. Melissa Salmeron is a certified master life coach. She helps moms give themselves the space they need to defeat overwhelm, step into their power, and show up as their true selves through the power of her care method. If you want some more me time as a parent without guilt, then you are going to love our interview with Melissa. So here we go. Well, welcome, Melissa, to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, and we are so excited to have you as a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I was just sharing before we recorded how excited I am to be here and honored to be asked to come on the show.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. This is really special for us. We've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Yes. So. And for our listeners, we've been following Melissa's work for a while. And so we're anxious for her to tell her story and learn a little bit about the awesome work she's doing with parents and overworked moms. So before we get started, Melissa, tell our listeners a little bit about how you stepped into entrepreneurship and what led you to work with overworked moms with your awesome solutions.
Yeah, so I am a mom of three, and my story is a personal one, which I think, it's like so many of us, you would have to have gone through some of this to be able to really know it and work with the people that we work with. And so I kind of start the story with when my daughter, she's 8 now, the middle child, when she was about 2 years old. I just clearly remember the day that I woke up, was getting ready for work in the morning, and I just had this feeling of just unfulfillment, really. It just sort of hit me.
Mm.
And I looked around and I was like, what is going on with me? Because, I, at that point, had everything that I wanted in life. I had, the husband, the house, the 2 kids, the boy and the girl, the dog. I mean, everything, which is everything I ever thought I wanted. And I should have, in my mind, I should have felt fulfilled with all of that. And yet, I didn't. I just felt like something was missing and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. So at that stage, I sought out some counseling to kind of work through what was going on with me. And I discovered so much about myself and so much around tools that are now, what I work with moms specifically with, that, I just really never um, either intuitively got or wasn't taught, or just like the world around us doesn't really show us, or I didn't pick up on it in any case. And so oh goodness, that started really just a deep journey for me. And, I didn't know it at the time, but that was my first step towards
Hmm.
working with moms. And so, fast forward, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, time is kind of a blur at this point. But I went through kind of a difficult season in life, and really it had me questioning everything. And then I got pregnant with my third child, which is such a blessing, but I didn't know that he was going to be in my world. I did not expect to have 3 children. And that was like, oh my goodness, well, there go my plans. Like I had all these plans for life. And up until a few years ago, they had all just, worked out step by step. And, I just was rolling along with it. And until, these events occurred, and then I had this pregnancy that I didn't know I was going to have, while I was sort of like in the space of figuring out who I wanted to be when I grew up, because I've spent my entire career, professional career, in banking.
Oh,
And so, um, yeah, I was thinking through, was that the ultimate calling for me? And so what happened was I went through a coaching program experience for myself for my own personal transformation. And during that time, it just became so clear to me that I was supposed to be working um, with moms and helping them to see some of these things that I can see, and helping introduce tools to them, and really holding their hand as they practice some of these tools, um, that they may need some help with. And so it just became clear to me that I could do that. I could start now. There was nothing holding me back from starting now with that. And so that's that's the journey. And so I just started. I just kind of put my flag out there, my shingle, as they say, and said, "Hey, moms, I want to help you. I want to help you through like the dynamic challenges of motherhood. It's just we're not meant to do this alone."
yeah. And
No.
none of us, get a book that tells us exactly how to do it, right? You got to figure it out. And you bring a lot with you from how you were raised and what you've been exposed to. So I really appreciate your willingness, or knowing that you have to go discover for yourself why you're feeling the way you're feeling and what's happening in your life. And I think it's awesome. It's led you down a path of helping others now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just you guys know. I mean, what an amazing feeling when you can help someone see things
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, what I love about, your journey is nobody was there to show you, right? Like
No.
it doesn't come all wrapped up in a bow for
Right.
you. Here's how you're a mom. Here's how you balance being a mom and a wife. And here's how you balance being a mom and a wife and have a career and, all in this little package. There you go. Right. It's just not there for you. And so I love that you found that calling to provide that for others that are in the same boat you were in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, as you know, Melissa, we work with healthcare leaders, and most of the healthcare leaders that we work with, they spend more time caring for others than they do for themselves. And then what happens is they end up feeling a lot of guilt about their parenthood, how they are parenting, about their kids. Are they there enough for their kids? So we wondered if you could just say a few words that leaders can deal with this parent guilt that many of them feel.
Yes, and I know that feeling very well personally, and that is something that I work with moms with and on. And I think one of the first steps is how often do we as parents really feel like we have the time to stop and question like how we're feeling? I think that so many parents have just accepted that guilt as part of the package. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
to be a parent is to feel guilty pretty much all the time. And especially if you are a leader or working, there's so many balls that you're juggling and it feels almost inevitable that you're going to drop those balls. And um, yeah, like, okay, well, I'll just go through it and deal with it. And maybe when they grow up, I won't feel guilty anymore. Yeah. So I think the first step is really, this is what I teach, is reconnecting with yourself, slowing down, um, because the world is so fast paced. No one's going to give us permission to slow down. Right? If you're
Right.
waiting on that to happen, just you'll be waiting for a long time. Um, so it takes the willingness to be able to slow down first and just reconnect to yourself. And from there, you can really maybe start to ask yourself some questions around, why you feel guilty. What's causing you to feel guilty? And I think journaling is a really great tool for this. Really just kind of writing it all out, getting it out of your head, um, and putting it on paper. Sometimes just the act of putting things on paper and seeing what you're saying to yourself, um, that in itself could be an exercise in which you're like, why am I feeling guilty for this? Why am I feeling guilty for working when it provides for my children and, all of the other things, just for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And sometimes it's an opportunity to kind of look deeper and say, if you write something down and um, questioning whether or not you should feel guilty about it. Is it something that you can change, for instance? So if you feel guilty for not spending time with your family because you're dedicating so much time to work, for instance, um, can you change that? Is there anything in there that you can change? I mean, you probably are working for a reason. So that may not be negotiable, but can you look at ways that you can get help or your schedule could maybe get rearranged so that you could spend more time with your kids, for instance?
Mm-hmm.
Just gives you a starting point to not feel, um, I think, so overwhelmed with like, I just feel guilty all the time. I don't know why. I'm not going to stop and think about it. I'm just going to feel guilty.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Just, really analyzing, kind of just sitting with it and
Mm-hmm.
getting to the root of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then change what you can.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be baby steps, right? It doesn't have to be a major change in your life.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because that in itself, when you're thinking of changing, can be a stopping point for so many of us, because it's like, oh, wow, I've got to go eat this elephant over here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just take a bite out of it. Just do one small
Right.
thing, one small
Right.
tweak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes back to, if you feel like, for your example that you used around, not spending enough time with your kids or your family, really thinking about, is it quantity or quality? And
Yes,
what are you doing when you're with them? Right. Like, it's the quality of the time. Sometimes it just takes 5 minutes with each of your children and they feel like you've given them the world, right? They don't have a sense of time. They have a sense of connection,
Right.
right? So it's maybe even how you're connecting when you are connecting. And that maybe reduces a little bit of the guilt, right? When the connections you're having are the highest quality, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
absolutely. And so, just in terms of like, practical things that you might consider doing, is I happen to be very structured. And so for me, to keep me, on track, I have a blocked time that just belongs to family time. And, that could look like whatever you want that to look like, right? It could be that 5 minutes. For me, I shoot for those power hours between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. when, it's dinner and it's baths and it's
Yeah.
bedtime and all of that, where, the phone goes away, because it's really, really,
Mm-hmm.
it was really, really challenging for me to let that go. I need to be checking emails. What if something's happening I need to respond to? And like, just giving yourself that permission that it's
Right.
okay. It can wait for 2 hours, or 5 minutes, or whatever that time frame is.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a great example. Well, we work with healthcare leaders to help them become thriving, resilient, and unstoppable. And really, we help them establish a number of different blueprints for
Hmm.
creating dynamic balance in their lives, right? Which is really kind of what we're talking about, right? When you have more balance, there's less guilt.
Yes.
And one of them is caring for self and caring for others, right?
Hmm.
Because it's equally important for us to care for ourselves. And they create action steps. So they create this blueprint. They understand what they're trying to achieve, the outcomes they want, what they're trying to avoid, or the consequences. And then they create the action step strategies, right, to get them those things that they want in relationship to caring for themselves and then taking care of others as well. And can you share a little bit, maybe from your CARE method, your CARE method, some of the strategies maybe to help that moms can use or parents can use to care for self? Maybe some of the things that you recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I work with moms and identifying, what method of connecting with themselves. The C stands for consciously connected. So, is it, because it's got to be realistic. If you don't feel like you can sit down and meditate for 5 minutes, and I tell you to sit down and meditate for 5 minutes, it's it's not going to happen, right? So there are many different ways that you can kind of reconnect with yourself, whether it's just quiet time, meditation, taking a walk every day just by yourself. Um, Journaling is always a good one. Breathing, just breathing. So just committing to one of those steps on a daily basis for just a short amount of time, um, kind of get you started so that you can just give yourself space. Uh, just that space that we don't take so often for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That way, when it comes time to really do some reflection and get into the A, which is the inner awareness, you really can honestly ask yourself questions and give yourself the real answers that are coming from you and not from everyone else.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
And once you get there, the R is for re-energize. And one of the hugest things I think we can do for ourselves is set boundaries for ourselves and with other people. That includes asking for help. That includes learning how to say no. Um, that's going to give us the energy. So many of us are feeling so depleted, and part of it is just because we're overcommitting and overextending. And once we
Yep.
learn to say no and
Mhm.
really kind of say no to ourselves sometimes with behaviors that we're not doing, that we don't, that are not serving us. And so boundaries and establishing healthy habits are part of the re-energize strategy. And finally, and I know you ladies talk a lot about this, is to become empowered from within, realizing
Mm.
that it's your
Yeah.
responsibility to take
Mm-hmm.
responsibility for and control of what you can,
Mm-hmm.
and not everyone else's stuff. And that, reminding yourself that you have the choice, like that's so empowering when you realize like you get to choose how you want to feel, and how you want motherhood to look, and all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
all
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Yeah, that's
So
one
true.
of our pillars is mindful choices in our
Mm,
in our dynamic balance effect framework, because the power of recognizing it's my choice, and then having some concepts to help you realize what you have choices about is really
right.
helpful for people, because otherwise it's just one big vast openness and they're trying to really feel empowered. So I really appreciate the empowered. Is it empowered choices or empowered?
Empowered from within is the
Empowered from
the
Empower from
within.
within.
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we give up our power, right,
Mm-hmm.
to other
Yep.
people. And we're always making choices.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
We're always choosing. And we're getting the results of those choices. So whatever we're getting is based on the choices we're making. So when you make a conscious choice, right? When you're really mindful about that choice, then you're making the choices that are moving you in the direction that you want to
Mm-hmm.
go, right? And not making the choices that are keeping you where you're at and unhappy, right? What about caring for
Yes.
others, Melissa? Do you talk with moms about that too, and kind of how to balance that, what they can do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what I would say is really that's part of the boundaries piece of it, within the care method is, you know, clarity is kindness, and modeling. I work with moms in part because I see the ripple effect of um, the way we live as mothers is how we are teaching our children life is. And so they are watching
Mm.
that. So I think a huge piece of um, that is, us modeling how we care for ourselves. And I can tell you, my oldest, he's 11, and um, he's a lot like me. He's his own person, but I, I used to feel kind of like, oh gosh, he's got some of the same struggles that I had, but now I see that as such a blessing because I've learned some of these tools um,
Mm-hmm.
that can help him not go through some of the challenges or have some of the suffering I hope that I had, just identifying different stress management um, techniques. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, when we started having these conversations a few years ago about um, things like meditation, he completely rejected it. It was like, oh, mom, um, you know, he was 9 at the time. He's like, that's not going to work. And now he's become so much more open to it. And he comes to me and he tells me, like, mom, I'm feeling so stressed. And we have conversations around like what's going on for him. And um, we do breathing exercises together. It's so beautiful that I'm so grateful that I've learned all this so that I can teach him how to navigate through that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's Well, that actually is a great lead in, Melissa, to another curiosity tracing I had. Speaking of your son, is, we in your work, you work with parents. We work with parents in our healthcare leader coaching programs. But what are some of the trends and the concerns of children? I mean, they've gone through a few things too in the last couple of years. And what are your thoughts about that? Working with parents, and what should we all be thinking about when it comes to the health and well-being of children right now?
Yeah, I think teaching them some of these strategies, like I just mentioned, is a
Mm-hmm.
huge piece of that. They've gone through so much stress over the past few years that thank goodness children are resilient, but it doesn't mean that the effects of this. If we're feeling bad, like how are they feeling? And they don't necessarily have the words or the ability to communicate how they're feeling all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, really asking them questions, it always comes back to
Yeah.
questions, I think, around what's going on for them, being present. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I can remember sitting in a parenting class a few years ago and really wanting to help my oldest at the time. And they were talking about it really came down to the fact that it wasn't the kids were fine. It was the parents.
Parents.
It was the parents that needed the help to be able to help their kids. And I remember thinking, like, oh man. Um, and
Yeah.
that's why, I feel like, yeah, there are things we can do to help our kids, but if we're helping ourselves, we're just
Yeah.
naturally helping them because they're seeing how we're navigating through this stress, and they're seeing how we're reacting to the latest
Yes.
bad news, and they're just watching all of that from us. And so the most important thing we can do is be grounded in ourselves and be
Hmm.
present with them.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
agree.
true.
I agree. Well, and I think too, so much of the isolation has impacted the kids. And I think in a lot of different ways, depending on what age they're at, like my youngest well, not my youngest, but the next to youngest grandson, when he would have been going into like daycare or preschool where he could be socialized, he had like a 2-year delay on that. Right. So
Mm,
you have to think about that isolation and the impact on their socialization, what they understand about how to be with others, there's just all kinds of nuances to this, I think, too. And just having that awareness that a lot of these different elements of what we've had to experience, how that impacts them and their development, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just
yes,
being aware and present with that, right? And really helping them to move through that, or to, get that socialization in different ways, or
absolutely. And it's a
Yeah.
it's a touchy subject, I think, but fortunately, I'm in Texas, and we got to go back in person a lot more quickly than we had that option. I'll say a lot more
Mhm.
quickly than some other areas of the country. And everyone has to determine that for themselves. But in my mind, it was
Right.
really like, okay, yes, I want to take care of them physically, but their mental and their social development is also very
Mhm.
important to me. And so ultimately, I decided that it was worth sending them back for those
Mhm.
pieces because we just we don't know the long-term impact
Mm-hmm.
of
Mhm.
that because we
Mhm.
are not meant to be alone. We are meant to be in
Right.
community. And so it's a very real thing. And I
Mhm.
just say, yeah, I think it just depends on, what your circumstances were and how your
Right.
kids are. Luckily, I feel like we were so blessed to have that opportunity to get them
Mhm.
re-socialized as quickly as
Mhm.
possible.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So lots of layers.
there is.
Hmm.
But I love I love your first comment that it starts with the parents and being role models and being aware of that as a parent. Maybe you don't even realize that you are being watched.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
All the time.
Absolutely. And it comes home pretty quickly when you start seeing some of those behaviors that you don't necessarily love about yourself, and there they are. They show up for you in the form of, what your daughter's
Your
doing
kids.
or what your son is
Mm-hmm.
doing. Yep.
Oh no, mini me's doing what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes.
For sure. For sure.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
Oh, wow. Well, this brings us to our missing questions, Melissa. It's just been so much fun to talk with you.
Oh, yay.
And we're towards the end of our time. So we have 3 questions and, just relax. You got these. They're nothing
Pop
serious,
quiz.
right? They're just kind of ways for us to get to know you a little bit more, our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. And so the first one is, if you and your husband could take a dream vacation without kids, where would you go and why?
Yes. Okay. Well, that's easy. We both love the beach, so anywhere tropical is good. I was just doing something for fun the other day and looking up trips to take. Not that we have anything planned yet, but I looked up Maldives, and oh my
Oh,
goodness, so beautiful, crystal clear water, little hut on the water. I mean, just sounds fabulous to me right now, and I would love to be there with him and just forgetting everything.
chilling.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, that sounds awesome. Great choice. Now, here's another one. Who is someone you admire and why?
Oh my goodness. That one is challenging. There's so many people that I admire. Um, one of the first people that comes to mind, which is probably a lot of people's, but I love Oprah. Um, I remember years ago, I don't know, 2004 or so, whenever she came out with her magazine, I remember running out and grabbing her magazine and just reading it cover to cover. Because I just loved the conversations that she had with people. I love seeing how she overcame so much in her life, and became the woman that she is now and has been for so many years. And speaking of someone who asks questions, she asked some questions. I'm sure of herself. I'm sure she's had to ask many questions of herself throughout the years, and of course, so many incredible people. She's gotten to learn from so many incredible people and share that with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So here is our wrap-up question. So, we work with healthcare leaders on bringing polarity intelligence as a leadership competency. And one of the aspects of understanding how polarities work is they're, 2 interdependent values of pairs that may seem opposite or contradict each other, but they need each other. So we're going to share a polarity with you. And it is very common to have a preference pole. In fact, most of us have a preference pole, even though they both, exist. So I'm going to share polarity with you, Melissa, and have you tell us and our listeners what your preference pole is.
Ooh.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Consistency or adaptability?
Oh, adaptability.
Okay. You like to kind of go with the flow?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, wait, is that right? Is that a right answer? No.
No right or wrong answer.
There's no right or wrong.
No, I'm just questioning about, I think going with the flow is, for sure. I had to learn that from a very young age, and I think it serves me well.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, what I love about what you said earlier is you're very structured. And the structure can bring consistency. But when you look at it from a polarity perspective, if you've had that consistency, it enables you to be more adaptable at the same time too, because you need both. You clearly need both consistency and adaptability in life. But so that's great.
Yeah, it's so true. And so my husband helps me a lot with this too, I think. Sometimes I do get in a box a little bit. I'll admit it, and he'll point that out to me. And so he really has shown me throughout our relationship, like where you need to be adaptable. Because he used to always ask me, "Okay, but if that doesn't work out, like what like what's our backup plan or whatever? Like let's not be so tied
Yeah.
into being in that box."
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. My husband was a great one for helping me with that too when we had kids.
Oh yeah.
When our kids lived with us. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
Okay,
man,
honey,
they
it's
teach you
okay.
how to be adaptable, don't they?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Just don't go in that room and look at that laundry all over the floor. Teach them how to do their own laundry. That was the best thing.
Oh man, I know. We're working on that. We're slowly working up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting into that age. You're getting into that age.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Melissa, where can our listeners find you? Like, where are some places for them to connect with you?
So the best place to connect with me is in my Facebook group for overworked moms, and I'm happy to share that link with you all.
Okay.
And I am on Instagram if you're not a Facebook person at Melissa_mom coach.
Okay.
And I have a website as well where you can learn more about my programs, and it is melissasalmeron.com.
Great.
Awesome.
And we will put all those links in the show notes so everybody has access to you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Oh, so much fun. I just loved listening to you talk about, and you have such passion for what you're doing. It's obvious that this is very heartfelt for you. And I just really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with all of our leaders that are moms out there.
I know.
Kind of manage the mom thing and the work thing and the life thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All the things. Thank you so much for having me. This is so great.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I just really appreciate your pearls of wisdom that you shared. And I just, what mom doesn't want a partner or coach to kind of help them through the steps? So I think it's great you're out there helping them.
I wish I would have had one.
I know.
I really wish I would have had one.
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's why
awesome.
that's why you're doing what
Well,
you're
that's
doing.
why I do what I do.
That's
Yes, it's absolutely true. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't be at this point without, having had a lot of support along the way myself. And so it's
Sure.
100% needed across the board.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
Okay, well, that's a wrap up for us listeners. Another episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. And thank you so much for joining us. Check Melissa's workout, and we will see you on our next episode. Stay safe and healthy.
Yeah. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, now a top-rated podcast for healthcare leaders. Please share this podcast with other healthcare leaders and anyone else you think would benefit. We are certain that if you found value in it, they will too. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And also, it would mean the world to us if you took a quick moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast player. It helps to get the word out about our podcast and incredible guests. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch our podcasts. You can also follow us on our Missing Logic social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time.